Great, so welcome back everyone. This is our final session of the Creative Futures Writers' Day. We now have the agents panel, and I'm going to introduce you to Salma Begum, who is a trustee of Creative Future, and she's also an agent with Greyhound Literary. Salma will host and chair the panel session today, so we're on from now until 3:45, so enjoy.
Thank you, Rose, and thank you so much for everyone turning up this afternoon. Good afternoon. Before we start, I just wanted to do some audience participation. Please don't groan. It's really easy. I just want you to put your hands up. So please, could you put your hand up if you are currently working on a creative writing project? And this can be at any stage from idea development all the way through to querying agents. Fabulous. We can see I have bad sight, but I can see someone waving, so that's great. Thank you for waving. But thank you so much. So I just wanted to start that by basically saying well done for coming here, and also for just setting your intention by putting your hand up. We understand here how daunting this process can be, and how there's so much information, and when you've been with an idea for so long and you've poured everything into it, getting to this stage, it's a really, really fantastic thing that you're doing, being here for yourself and turning up for your career and for your ambitions. So thank you, and thank you for joining us and for letting us share a little bit about our work and what we do, and hopefully giving you some tips to get you onto the next stage of your writing ambitions. So before we go into it, I'm just going to give you a bit of a background on Creative Future. So for those of you who may be new to our work, Creative Future is a vital catalyst for change in the arts sector. It was founded in 2007. The organisation is dedicated to nurturing underrepresented artists and writers, helping them to build their confidence, develop their careers, and share their powerful stories. Creative Future champions talented individuals who face barriers due to mental ill health, disabilities, socioeconomic background, gender identity, or as members of communities experiencing racial inequality. By providing platforms, opportunities, and tailored support, Creative Future actively tackles social injustice and inequality in the arts, striving to build a more inclusive and vibrant creative world where every voice is not just heard, but celebrated. And today we're incredibly fortunate to be joined by a panel of distinguished literary agents who are at the forefront of discovering and championing new talent. Their expertise is invaluable, and their willingness to share it is a testament to their commitment for a more transparent and accessible publishing industry. I'm particularly excited because we're joined by colleagues who I admire and have heard lots about, and have had the pleasure with some of you for working with you. And so I'm really curious to just learn a little bit more about your process, learn what things we have in common and how we differ, but also just to, I hope, that most importantly, give you something that you can go back home with. So before we start, I'm going to introduce the panelists. So bear with me again, I'm going to do a bit more reading from my phone. So first we have, and I also have written this in a format which doesn't reflect how people are sitting. So I will, if I call your name, please can you put your hand up? So I know it's you, well, that the audience knows it's you. So first we have Silé Edwards from Andrew Nurnberg Associates. So Silé began her career at the Publishers Association before moving to Curtis Brown. She joined Andrew Nurnberg Associates in 2022 with a dynamic list of authors she built in just 2 years, including debut authors and co-founders of Everyday Racism, Natalie and Naomi Evans. For her passion and commitment, Silé was named London Book Fair Trailblazer in 2021. She's on the lookout for non-fiction that deepens our understanding of the world, and is also drawn to incisive and witty fiction that explores moral dilemmas, especially those concerning love or murder. Next, I'd like to introduce Clara Foster from Aevitas Creative Management. So Clara has worked at the big five agencies and publishers, and she's passionate about working editorially with writers and is seeking voice-led, character-driven works. Her tastes range from accessible, literary and upmarket fiction with a strong female focus to fantasy and historical genres. In non-fiction, Clara is interested in expert-led narratives at the intersection of women, politics, culture or science. We're also joined by Liv Maidment, head of books at the Madeleine Milburn agency. Liv joined the agency in 2020 and represents a stellar list of literary and upmarket fiction, including best-selling and award-winning authors like Julia Armfield, who I absolutely love. So she's deeply committed to championing voices from communities that are underrepresented in contemporary publishing and is currently seeking original fiction with a strong literary voice. And finally, we have Amandeep Singh from Maw Christie. Amandeep joined the agency in 2025 and is a judge for this year's Future World's Prize for SFF Writers of Colour. With a decade of experience as an editor, bookseller and agent, including time at Penguin Random House, she has a passion for championing new voices. Amandeep is looking for compelling non-fiction memoirs and expert-led books, as well as character-led book club fiction and a select fantasy of speculative fiction. Huge thank you for you all being here. And if there's anything that you would like to add or that I haven't covered in the bio, please say now or forever hold your peace. Okay, great. So I'm just going to get into it. So my first question is what is often the first hurdle for writers? So what's the process of approaching you with a manuscript? Could each of you walk through the ideal submission process for your agency and any specific initial materials you require? So Amandeep, perhaps we could start with you.
Yes, so we receive submissions into a team inbox, so hopefully that makes it a bit easier. When submitting to us, we have non-fiction at grahammoorchristie.com for anything in non-fiction, and we have fiction at grahammoorchristie.com for fiction. So you can send your emails to either of those addresses and they'll be read by us. And for fiction, we look for a synopsis, a query letter, and the first 10,000 words of your work, of your manuscript. And for non-fiction, we ask for a bit more. We ask for a proposal, and all the information about either of those submissions is on our website, so all the details are there.
Liv, could we ask for your process?
Sure. So at Madeleine Milburn, we accept submissions purely through our website. You need to go onto our website and choose which agent is right for your work. I work in adult fiction. So for adult fiction, we ask just for, similarly, a synopsis, a pitch letter, and the first either 10,000 words or 3 chapters of the manuscript. But yeah, it's all kind of all on our website, and we've got like FAQs and various kind of tips articles of kind of how to put together that submission package on there as well.
I feel like I'm just repeating because it's very similar. I think there's a kind of standardized way of querying agents, and it is to go to the agency website. If there's multiple agents, like similarly to Liv at Madeleine Milburn, we have a few agents working across a really wide spectrum of fiction and non-fiction. So picking who is the best fit based off their bio, what they're looking for, and just what they represent as well, and then sending in your query package via the submissions email with who you want it addressed to, flagged in your subject line or somewhere very clearly in the body of that email.
Do you have anything that you'd like to add, Clara?
Tiny bit. I mean, most of it, can you guys hear me? Yeah. Has been covered. I accept queries through Query Manager. So at Aevitas, you have to target the agent and then go find them on Query Manager, although you can always, find them through our submissions page. The only thing I'd say is like we've said, most submissions are kind of similar. Most agents ask for similar things. But the thing I always say that is most important is that they do vary slightly what people ask for. And the best thing you can do to help yourself is when you're targeting an agent, look at what their agency's specific rules are and follow those. Because it's just a really easy way to make sure that the agent knows that you've done your research. But yeah, if you want to query me, you find me on Query Manager. I should say my bio is slightly out of date. I'm not currently accepting non-fiction, but looking out for some fun fiction. So yeah.
Lovely, thank you. And I actually, one of my reflections on this is just how amazing it is that we have an open submission process. And I know that it can still, despite all that, still feel like such an uphill battle getting your work out there and getting it recognised by an agent. But the fact that all you need is your finished manuscript, but then for varying different agencies, either a 10,000 word submission, extract, or 3 chapters. Like, I think that's kind of spectacular that this information is out there, and as long as you have you can get to a computer and you can upload your work, that you can really get the attention of some of our best agents. And I guess kind of leading on to that is a question for all of you again about how, I know that you do, but I imagine from the perspective of people who are going through this process where it's, they haven't had contact with you before, do you read the submissions that come to you via these routes, and do you take writers on from that? Clara, I'll go to you.
Yes, absolutely. I think the first thing you'll hear from a lot of agents is that we do read submissions in our spare time. It happens when you're not doing the work that you're paid to do, which is work for your clients. So it is the sort of thing that, writers go, I haven't heard, it's been 3 months, and I'm going, look, a lot of us are behind. But we come to the submissions inbox because we're looking for new talent. And that's really exciting. So you have to take the process of reading those submissions seriously. Otherwise, you're wasting everyone's time, including your own. And some amazing talent comes through submissions inbox. And one of my favorite ever sales that I did was, when I found something in the inbox and as an assistant, and I was like, oh my God, I want to do this job forever. So it's still something that I think all of us love. I love it. And I'm always coming to the inbox hoping to find something really exciting, because that'll be a new client for me, that'll be new books in the world, and that's really, really cool.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add to that?
I guess I'd just say, I do consider it very much the bread and butter of my job, going into the submissions, finding work in there. It's the most exciting thing to know that people want to send you their work. And I think it's really important as debut writers to know that when agents are opening up their inbox, they are really, really looking for talent, and they're really excited to see the work that's in there. We go to it with so much excitement for that, and kind of gratefulness that things are being sent to us.
Yeah, I think there is this kind of preconceived idea, there is this term, the slush pile, and it gets this bad rep because you feel like you're just sending something out into the ether. But actually, all of us have mad respect for that. We understand that this is, it really helps us actually, to be able to sit down and know when we open that part of our inbox, there could be something there for us that we could, a writer that we could represent, a book that we could help bring into this world. So I just wanted to kind of really spend some time there, and I know that it's kind of obvious to ask that, do you read them? But that it is actually true that we do, so please do use that. What is my next question? So yes, making an impression. So now I'd love to ask you what makes a submission stand out? What are you specifically looking for in a manuscript and cover letter? And are there certain elements that immediately catch your eye and make you excited to read on? So Silé, can I come to you first?
It's really kind of boring and salesy of me, but good comps. And comps are books or films or TV series or anything that's sort of existing in the world of media, film, TV, art in general already, that gives me a sense of what the novel I'm about to read or what the proposal I'm about to read is about and what it's going to offer to a potential reader. I find really clear ones the most enticing, and it doesn't have to be the most obvious. I had one that I'm reading at the moment, which was if the Louvre heist was written by Stephen King. And I was like, I have no idea, but sure, it just it's too Stephen King, so it's going to be horror. It's either going to be scary, or it's going to be weird, or it's going to be super long. But either way, I know what it is. And the Louvre heist obviously is a huge thing everyone's talking about. So it's probably going to be about a heist, about wealth inequality, and about a dynamic of people doing a bad thing potentially for the right reasons. And that's what gets me interested in something, is that kind of way of talking about it and thinking about it that you would tell a friend, if you're meeting with a friend and you're like, oh, I'm watching this thing at the moment, it's really cool, it's kind of like this show that you already like, or that book that you already like. That's what really makes something stand out to me, whether it has love or murder or both.
Amandeep, can I ask you the same question?
Yeah, I mean, Silé's answer is a really good one, and I would underscore that. I would also say confidence, which sounds very vague, but maybe taps into what Silé said about that this author really understands their story. And that does come through in the query letter, I find, when the pitch is not necessarily too much of a synopsis or a blow-by-blow of this is what happens in this story. It's more about the emotional heart of the story, and that's obviously the hook that then will speak to a reader and then speaks to agents who are reading those submissions. So I would say also voice. I really get a sense of, at the best submissions I've had, the query letter is there's a sense of the voice I'm going to encounter, and then when I open the manuscript, I see that amplified, and I find that really exciting, and that always stands out. And I know it's tricky because with submission packages, it's often a bit of a template. There are these guides on here's how you write a pitch, here's how you write your synopsis, and I guess that spark of what your unique authorial voice is always really worth remembering in terms of your pitch and what drew you to writing about that in the first place. Maybe there's like a real life event or like you saw something in the news like the Louvre heist. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that speaks to me among the many, many emails that, that will jump out to me, I find.
So on top of those things, because that's like definitely things that immediately you see, I think when an author's taken the time to create an almost like back of the book style blurb, so like when you can tell if someone is reading a lot, they're looking at the back of their novels, they're getting a sense of kind of how novels are sold in Waterstones, kind of what's on the back of them there, and kind of recreating that kind of style and that kind of salesy, exciting, creative attitude to talking about their book. So for me in fiction, when I see a really kind of back of the book style compelling blurb, that really makes me want to jump into that manuscript right away and prioritise reading it.
Clara?
Yeah, I think I'm exactly with Liv on that one. The first thing I want to see in a query, I want you to say, hey, I'm sending you my book, its title, its genre, and its word count, and then I want to see the pitch. And the pitch for me is the centerpiece of a query letter. It's the only thing to me that really matters. I think it's really interesting to hear from everyone, because I think we're all approaching the same thing from different ways. And comps, I think, can be useful for me, but I don't go there first. I go to the blurb, and I do want it to look like the blurb on the back of a book in a bookshop, or feel like setting up the story in a way, I always say, like a film trailer sets up a film. You want to set up the character, you want to set up the narrative arc. Maybe you tell us, in some way what the inciting incident is, and then we want to read the rest of the novel. And for me, it is absolutely crucial that if you want a great query letter, you have to get that pitch right. And then from there, absolutely, I think comps, and I'm with Amandeep, I always like to know if somebody's done a really cool pitch, especially for like a piece of literary fiction, if they then give me a sentence on why they think, why did they write this book? Why are they the person to tell this story? I think that can be a really useful and interesting way of really wanting to dig in further.
Thank you. So interesting to hear you all talk about parts of the process and elements that stand out to you that also stand out to me, but in different ways. Like, I love that idea of it being like a film trailer. Haven't thought about that before. I think the other thing that I would say to add on to that is trust yourself, in the sense of, if you have done your work and you've done your research, it comes through. You don't have to overthink it. The other thing that I would say is, if you're getting so stuck about voice or trying to kind of emulate the reading experience of the novel in your query letter, don't worry too much. Like some of the best submissions I've had, they've just been like the query letter has been very professional. You know, and I've liked that. You know, there's almost kind of a I wouldn't say like it's not a personal voice or anything. It's just more very straightforward, almost like what I would say that if you were applying for a job, perhaps that kind of letter. It's more functional. And I know that what's going to happen is that I'm going to read the book or the extract that you've sent through, and then I'm going to get a sense of that. Anyway, so if you do get really stuck and you are really, you know, like, oh my gosh, trying to tell the story from, write to the agent from the perspective of your character, don't overthink it. The other piece of advice I think I would give is to share it with people that you trust. Sometimes it can be very helpful to share it with someone who isn't interested in your writing career at all, and just to ask for their advice as someone who is coming to this letter. What are they getting from it, and what kind of questions do they have? And I think it's always helpful, because ultimately it's about you communicating your work to someone who doesn't know you or doesn't know about all the work that you've been doing to get to this point. So sometimes it can just be very helpful to get another pair of eyes, even if it's someone who's got no interest in the world of publishing or the world of publishing your book. I guess one of the questions that I would ask, and it's maybe slightly provocative, it's one that I've been asked before, or a statement that has kind of been put to me, and I've been like, oh, yeah, and I've thought a lot about. But sometimes, you know, I encounter frustrated writers who are like, well, that's your job, you know, that's like, you're meant to come up with the perfect pitch, and my job is just to write the book. That's all I want to do. And yet now I've got all this other extra work that I have to do, and I've got to pitch myself and professionalize my work, but I don't think of it like that. I'm a creative. And yeah, I've thought about this quite a bit, and I would just love to know whether you've had those experiences and what you think about that, and how to help people who might be in that kind of frame of mind transition perhaps to what we're asking of them. Amandeep, I saw you nodding quite a bit, so I'm going to start with you.
I've had that question too, and I do understand where it comes from a writer's perspective, because you are querying agents because you want their kind of expertise in navigating a commercial landscape. But I guess what's interesting about this is to imagine, if you're in that position, imagine you have a published book, and you've got to talk about it with people. Maybe you're doing book club events. Maybe you're doing some really great PR. Maybe you even get on like a sofa on like a late night TV show. Sorry, this is really... But it's sort of thinking, how would you talk about your book then? And to see it as an opportunity rather than a kind of, you know, bureaucratic hurdle you've got to get through. Because the writers that... and many of you here will be the same, you just really want to talk to people about, you know, the things you've imagined or the stories that you're obsessed with, or maybe, you know, you keep coming back to a certain character, and it's sort of capturing that in your pitch, I suppose, and seeing it through that perspective. So I hope that is helpful to think of it in that way.
Absolutely. Do you have anything to add?
I would say, look, I don't disagree that it very much is our job to be the expert in how to pitch it and how to talk about it to publishers and all of that. But I also think having a sense of talking about your work also helps people to understand it as you see it, and that is really important, like being able to bring people to your work in the way that you want them to kind of to get it. And I think that is very beneficial to a writer to be able to do that.
I agree.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, publishing's a team effort. You know, it's my job to get it into the hands of editors in the right way. It's your job as the writer to get it into my hands and make me want to read it. You know, it's all a process. And I think when, you know, some writers do get frustrated or angry, and, you know, obviously never right to get angry, and if anyone's ever rude to anyone, I'm like, well, that's not acceptable. But for the most part, I really understand, because when writers are angry, it often means that actually they're frustrated, they're disappointed. It's a really hard process, and I have a lot of sympathy for that. What I'd say, if you're ever feeling that way, is try and take a step back and have a little bit of grace for the people who work in this industry, because we are doing, most of the agents I know work all hours, all the time. And we want to find talent, and we want to help you guys, and we want to help you get published. So it's about sort of learning to balance the emotions that run high in publishing, because they always do, because the stories that you write are your projects, your babies, and we really take that seriously. So just remember, that we are as excited to find you as you are to find us, and we want to find great books.
And yeah, I'd say I agree in terms of the working. You're all here on a Sunday, so that's I'm very aware of that. Silé, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
My daughter's 5 years old, and I tried to explain this to her, and she wasn't listening, so now I have a captive audience. This is a great question, actually. Is the difference between being a writer and being an author, and it might be controversial. You might all hate me after this, but being a writer is that romantic, you can write whatever you want, however you want. You never have to talk about it in any way other than the way you want to. And being an author is a job or a career path, which means that you have to talk about the product, which is your book that you've written, slightly differently. And if you are happy to be a writer and to write whatever you want, however you want, that's fantastic. And you should absolutely do that. But if you want to be an author, a published author, especially a traditionally published author, though self-publishing is similar because you have to do all of the marketing, publicity, sales, printing, everything. So, once you cross that boundary from being a writer to being a published author, you do have to start talking about your book in a way that is going to get it sold, because otherwise you are not going to sell any copies. And that is what it is. That's where the line lies. And you can probably tell why my 5-year-old just stopped listening to me at that point.
Wait, so you came to this conclusion through speaking about this with your 5-year-old?
Yeah, often. I have my deepest thoughts at bath time, because she'll ask me, she asked me the other day, which she'd learned about, death and life and the circle of it. And she was like, when are you going to get dead? And I was like, oh, I mean, okay.
Oh, wow.
I don't think she was wishing for it, though. I think she was just curious.
Your author bio. Your agent bio.
Yeah, she was just like, oh, what's murder? Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, we have these really deep conversations where she'll ask me things like, well, what's an author? But is it a writer? And I'll be like, oh, God, I got to explain this to you now. And by the time I get my head around it, she's stopped listening.
Well, this is amazing, because I basically came to that conclusion about, when this question was posed to me. And I had to have this really, really serious conversation with this writer and say, it's completely fine for you not to want to go through this process. That does not take away from you taking your work seriously or thinking of your creative projects, that they still have value. But that you do have to ask yourself whether or not this journey that you're about to embark on with a literary agent or through professional publishing is what you want. And I think that can be quite a difficult question to sit with, and I could see that, and I think that's partly why I perhaps hadn't come to it myself, that kind of answer for a while, because the last thing I want to do, and the last thing any of us want to do, is put you off of pursuing this career. Firstly, we depend on it. If you do not write books, then there's nothing for us to sell. So please do keep writing. But at the same time, we do all see the real power of books, and we want to encourage you and hopefully be on that path with you to keep this great art form alive. But it is something, I know why you said that, kind of had that caveat of you might all hate me after this, because it's a difficult question for which we don't necessarily have an easy answer, and actually that has to come from you and you thinking about what it is you really want from this. And it's completely fine to be like, no, actually I'm writing these stories for a different purpose, and they could be read by my small community who I will get to in a different way that's not traditional publishing, and that would still be fulfilling to me. That's completely fine. I guess kind of related to that, just because Silé, you mentioned self-published writers. How do you all feel about self-published writers? Do you work with them? And yeah, just to start from there, really. Silé, if I can come to you, yeah.
So one of the arguably most successful, biggest authors on my list was originally self-published, and she was actually about to publish the first book in her now 5-book series when I got her traditional publishing deal, and she sort of did this pivot. But I've got, aside from her, I've got about 3 authors who had previously self-published and have retained, their Kindle Unlimited account and, still toy with the idea. Like, I think it's a really good and fully valid way of publishing your work. And I think that it depends on how you want to bring your work into the world. I think self-publishing has its merits and its pitfalls, just like traditional publishing does, because, okay, you get to have full creative control over the cover, over everything, but you also have to fund it. You have to understand the timelines, the printing. If you print with this printer, is the quality of the book, like the actual paper, how does it feel, versus printing with another printer? What are the lead times on printing a book? You have to understand all these things, which you don't if you have a traditional publisher, but then you have less control over the traditional publishing. So I think it's a really good thing. But it depends on the type of author you are, the type of book you want to produce, the type of audience you want to reach as well, because we've seen huge numbers for thrillers and romance and other sorts of genre fiction, and not so many numbers for memoir and other, areas of the market that people do tend to publish into. So yeah, it does depend on a lot of factors, but I think it's a very equally viable path as traditional publishing.
Yeah, and definitely in publishing, kind of the rise of certain genres where there has been a history of self-publishing. I don't know, I was going to pose this to you, Amandeep, whether you kind of find that in the work that you do representing SFF writers or looking to represent them.
You mean in terms of self-published people in those genres? Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been amazing success that writers have found through self-publishing. I mean, Diabound, for example, is a really good example of self-published success. There's probably a few more that I'm forgetting. Maybe some others can chip in. But one of the things I find challenging about that, I suppose, is the cases where it doesn't necessarily work out in sort of a blazing, glorious success. And that's tougher, I think, because you've put your copyrighted work out there. It's already available for purchase and consumption. And if, for example, you've sold maybe 100 copies over a year, you don't have a sales track with that book. And then you may have to kind of work on another project and see, it's just quite risky, I would say, if you are approaching self-publishing, because you're doing all the work and you're your own kind of marketing lead, you're managing your marketing budget. It's and it's still unpredictable, just like it is for traditional publishers. I mean, traditional publishers will, maybe pay 6-figure advances for books that maybe sell 600 copies in hardback. That does happen too, but at least there, the risk is taken by the whole company, and it doesn't, and there's still, wide distribution of that book. But
also, you have 6 figures at that point. So as the author, you're happy.
Exactly. So I guess just to say, it's a kind of a game of poker, or it's very risky, the business of publishing, whether you're self-published or traditionally published. So I suppose as a writer, making that choice of what kind of risk do you have more of an appetite for? And then at least you can be in the driving seat of that decision. Because I did meet someone who had self-published and wanted to do something with that book, but if it's already out there, it's really hard to then pivot with that particular work. So then you're asking them to write another 80,000 words of something else. So yeah, long sprawling answer, but I'm sure there are also other thoughts about it.
Do either of you have any other thoughts on that?
I would just say in literary and upmarket fiction, there are things that with self-publishing it's harder to achieve than with a traditional publisher. So things like getting quotes from great authors, being published under the banner of a very established literary house, getting reviews in newspapers, things like prize wins, things that can kind of matter just as much as a sales track, are much harder or very difficult to achieve through the route of self-publishing. So I think in literary upmarket fiction, the self-published route is maybe less established than in maybe more genre fiction.
Do you have anything else that you'd like to add, Clara?
Not hugely. I think it's been answered really well. Actually, I think Amandeep made the point that I would have made, and so I'm just going to make it again, just so everyone hears it, because I do think there's been amazing success with self-published writers, and that's not a bad way to go. But if you don't find success in self-publishing, it's going to be really hard to place that project traditionally. And I think that is the one thing that I would like writers to take away, because that's what I see in my inbox. Writers who say, I published this on Amazon last year, it got great reviews, I'd like to place it with a house, and then, I might go to the Amazon page and it's got 3 reviews. And I feel really strongly that, I want to help that person, but at that point, it makes it, from a business perspective, much harder for me to help them, no matter what I think of that book, because it's already out there. You can't put the cat back in the bag. So just be sure that if you are self-publishing, that you're not thinking, well, I'll do this now and see how it goes, and then it'll get picked up. Just know that that's your plan, and have a really strong plan for it.
Yeah. And I guess kind of going back to like where we started with you, Silé, I would say that similarly, I represent authors who have been self-published, and I guess the way that I approach that relationship, in kind of adding to everything that you've said, and especially what you've said there, Clara, we're talking about the next book project. We're very rarely talking about the book that they have self-published. And I think it's a great foundation. Actually, some of those relationships that I have are so meaningful, and I learn a lot about the process from a different angle, which is just as valid. But yeah, and those writers do continue to think about, maybe there are some projects where they continue to self-publish, and some projects where we think that a mainstream a mainstream publisher is the better approach. But I do think that it's such a interesting and rich, fertile landscape there right now. Just out of interest, have any of you self-published your own work? This could be a short story, a poem, or a whole novel. Please, could you raise your hands if you have?
We literally cannot see you, so you're not being singled out.
I can see a couple.
I can. Oh, wow! Thank you. Okay, cool. Thank you. That was a bit of market research for myself. So thank you so much. I'm going to move on now and ask about the common mistakes and pitfalls. So what are my questions? So yeah, just so we know what to avoid. So it's kind of twofold. What is the most common mistake people make when approaching you or trying to get published? And following on from that, what is one key piece of advice you would give to writers who are just starting out on this journey? And Liv, I'll start with you.
I often say that the kind of most common mistake is addressing all of us as dear sirs. I feel like we get that quite a lot. But it just goes into the wider question of like making sure that, you're double checking your cover letter, you've got the right person's name on it, you're kind of making them feel targeted, because I think that, then it, sorry, if they feel like it's been targeted to them, it's more likely to kind of reflect their wish list, the type of work that they're looking for, the type of work that they ask for, and just taking the time to really like refine your cover letter, refine the ideas in it, and make it feel as strong as possible. I think that like it's a really obvious answer, but just taking the time in the same way that you would if you're applying for a job that you really want, to make sure that it's really readable, really engaging, and is just putting your best foot forward. I think you can always tell when it's been a bit rushed, and I think just taking that extra time.
Yeah, and sorry, do you mind if I jump in there just to add on to that? Not only do you want to make sure that the agent knows that you've targeted them, but you should also be sure that you are targeting the right agent. And I would like to say that sometimes I get people who seem to think that they're sort of the exception to my wish list. So I say I represent YA fantasy, and I work through Query Manager. So you can only submit things that I have said I want to see. And then sometimes people submit me under the YA fantasy. They say, I've written you this middle grade title. And I'm like, great, I don't represent middle grade. I can't help you. So it's a matter of making sure that if I'm saying I represent mythological retellings and you're sending me a psychological thriller, that's a mismatch for both of us. So make sure you know that you really want to be submitting your work to the agent you're submitting to, so that they can find you, you can find them, you can create a relationship. And it seems obvious, but that mismatch happens, I think, more often perhaps than you'd think.
Amandeep?
I think similar to what Liv and Clara have said, actually, in terms of receiving, for example, children's submissions when we don't, as an agency, work in that space at all. That's the main one, really.
Yeah. Silé, do you have anything you'd add to that?
I mean, the misgendering thing, like there is actually a Mr. Edwards agent, and I just do not want to associate myself. So I feel so angry when I open a submission addressed to Mr. Edwards when I am in fact Miss or Ms. Edwards. But that shows me that either you're working from a template, you're working very quickly, or you're not taking the time to make sure that that letter is addressed properly. And I do not mind spelling mistakes or, anything kind of minor. I'm really not that anal about things like that, but it just, when I can see, I think, like Liv said, when there's just a lack of care and intention, and if you're spelling an agent's name wrong in quite a drastic way, or addressing dear sirs, or, something that isn't, more intentional and careful, that immediately throws up red flags for me, and I think has done over my whole career, that I've never signed anyone who got my name wrong or addressed me in the incorrect way, because usually as I go on, it's like, okay, this is the first of many and we're going down a slippery slope. So just getting off on the right foot is always good. And then just so that I don't echo the thing that we've all said, which is so true about just not researching the genres and the areas that agent is working within. Another pitfall I see is attaching a full manuscript when we've specifically asked for a partial. And just from our side of that, that's because if you get to the end of the 3 chapters, 10,000 words, whatever, and you aren't compelled to read on, that is a sign enough that you're not the right person for it. So getting a full manuscript and then having to try to see where you're going to stop reading to take stock of what you've read so far can be more difficult and take more time than being able to process those 3 chapters or that proposal. So I think being really clear about what is being asked and sending exactly that and no more, no less is good.
Great, thank you. I guess the thing that I would just say after asking that horrible question is that we understand that mistakes happen. It is so common that we'll get, the fact that lots of us were nodding to very specifics means that we encounter them quite a lot. And yes, without going into detail why that person might have done that, I think the one thing that I would stress is that it's okay to have noticed that and to write back and just say, oh, I'm sorry. I've noticed that there was a mistake and I'd like to resubmit. I think that actually, Clara, you said this last year, which I was like, oh, wow, that's such a helpful trick. But I think it was something along the lines of when we understand that you are querying lots of agents, and what helps is to kind of make your wish lists and almost like a list A, list B, and you can keep going. and actually don't query your dream agent first, because there may be, well, most of the time, like there might be a mistake in that email, and actually it's great to be able to catch it and not then spend a whole, like, you know, I don't know, a whole day panicking that, you know, you really, really wanted to make this great impression on your dream agent, and now you're having to kind of send that email. Although I think that your dream agent will again hopefully forgive you for that, because then they shouldn't be your dream agent if they don't.
I feel like we can tell though. We can tell, like, I've never had any conversations with colleagues or like friends in the industry where a genuine mistake is like the end. You know, it's like you can definitely tell the difference between a genuine mistake or autocorrect getting in the way and someone who just is not trying.
Yeah, and I had an email from someone the other day who emailed me back and went, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I you know," because they'd addressed it to somebody else. They were like, "I did really want to query you." And I looked at it, and the funny thing is I'd looked at that query and I chuckled to myself, because I know that person had queried me and wanted to query me, because the other agent that they'd addressed it to, I could clearly see who it was. And I was like, oh, that person represents similar things to what I do. They've done their research. Yeah. So it's not the end of the world. But if you do make a mistake, it depends on the size of the mistake. Sometimes people email me and they're like, "Hey, I submitted this and then I changed a couple of sentences on page 3. Can I send you the updated version?" And I'm like, no. In order to do that, you'd have to pull your query and resubmit, and you can, but that's just going to send you to the back of my pile. So work out how big the mistake you think that you've made is, and then don't act on it unless it's significant enough to make a difference to the agent. I know we're all sort of giving you, do this, don't do this. A lot of it's common sense. Yeah. I think, you know, most writers are quite smart and they can work out what it is that they need to be doing. So don't, I think the point someone's making is don't freak out about it, don't worry. And yes, I would say query in batches. I tend to think batches of like 6 small batches, so that you know who you're researching, you have a list, and either put your top agent at the end of your first batch or the top of your second batch, so that you're not sending off an email and then going, damn, I wish I'd done it differently.
Yeah, I was like kind of nodding along to all of that, partly because like I make mistakes all the time. We're often juggling lots and lots of things, aren't we? And I mean, emails are just what a form of technology, right? So like we completely understand that it's not the most the most friendly when you're also submitting to lots of people. And I've definitely had to send sorry emails to authors when I'm sending back my response, because I've sent it in a hurry, and it's just taught me, as much as you can try to make space and build in time for something that you really care about. And I do think like that responding to people is something I care about. So I'm trying to be better. That is my commitment to you all. So I am now going to open up for questions. But before we do that, I just want to do like a brief preamble. So please be aware that this is not an opportunity to pitch your work directly to the panelists or to follow up on a submission you may have sent. So our panelists are here to offer general advice to benefit everyone, and we want to make this a safe and useful space for all. So we ask you, please be respectful of our panelists, and also please be respectful to your fellow audience members by keeping your questions concise so we can get through as many as possible. So thank you so much for understanding in advance. Clara, I'm going to let you pick.
Okay, that nice lady in the orange top with the blue jacket had her hand up straight away, so I think it's only fair that she gets the first question. She was like, I was impressed.
Thank you. I think with the current technology, do you see AI as having creative potential in the traditional publishing as we have it today?
Can I jump in there?
Or is there, you can answer?
I was just going to answer that one if you don't mind. The first thing I'd say is that right now in publishing contracts, you have to warrant to a publisher that you haven't written your book in conjunction with AI. So the first thing that you should know is that. And then quite often, a lot of people, there's a wider conversation to be had. But for me personally, it says on my inbox, have you written your submission with AI, and if the answer is no, then I'm afraid I don't personally want to see it. I am interested in human creativity, and that's what I want to see in my inbox. Silé, I don't know if you had something to add to that.
No, I do not like answering AI questions on panels. I'm so sorry. It was a good question. I just don't want to answer it.
I'm going to let you each choose someone from the audience and then answer that question. Like you just have and say, Silé, it's your turn.
Okay, to be fair to the person in the middle, because you sat like directly green jumper, centre, front and centre, so I feel like you should get a question.
Thank you. What are the most unconventional or creative ways that a writer has caught your attention?
No, because everyone just went, oh, and now everyone's going to think that they can do it. Do you guys want to? No? Shall I go?
You chose this.
I did. I don't know. I'm regretting it. Okay. I did not sign this person. So let that take from this what you will. But someone made me a personalized "Am I the Arsehole" Reddit post, but it was their story. So it was like, "Am I the arsehole?" Blah 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 blah, and it was their query letter within that, and they were kind of using the dilemma from their plot as and I'm obsessed with that Reddit thread. I find it so fun, and it caught my eye because it was, it was a break from the format that we traditionally expect, but they understood their world and what they were writing so well that they were able to distill it into this quite quirky format, and I found that really compelling. And then in the end, I actually didn't sign them because it just wasn't the right fit for me, and it was the story itself, the manuscript itself, rather than the way they pitched it. So, it was they'd done everything right, and I hope I was, I'd let them know that, even though it didn't come with an offer of representation. It stood out. It was years ago, but it still, comes back to me. I think it's the most creative and interesting way I've ever been queried.
Cool. I didn't actually have an answer to that. So I was like, wow, okay. Yeah.
I don't have an answer, but can I just jump in there? You sometimes see people that you're going, okay, you're trying really hard to be unconventional, and I sort of wish you'd just given me a pitch. So I would say, unless you are absolutely sure that the way you're being unconventional is completely brilliant, it's fine to stick with a regular pitch. We want to see a regular pitch.
I think the message is that the unconventional ones don't make a query or anything stand out more than the conventional ones. It's not... Everyone who I've signed from my submissions inbox in the last 3 years has just done standard query letter, attached the attachments that we've asked for, and it's just simply the magic combination of right time, right place, right manuscript. It just, and they've done as much as they can to make it fit, so I know that we're always like, but how can I stand out? What can I do? And I think it is unfortunately just be as good as you can be and keep trying. And that very hackneyed advice of just you get knocked down, you get back up, you get knocked down, you get back up, and that can be more impactful than trying to circumvent those structures.
Liv, your turn.
A lot of pressure. I'll go for someone from this side. Hi. Yeah. It's a lot of pressure.
Thank you.
Hiya.
Hello, thank you. My question is really about your working relationship with the writer beyond the stage of getting signed. How much are you kind of in contact? And then I suppose beyond that, follow-up books, second books, third books. What sort of relationship have you got at that point? Are they kind of in the hands of the publisher, or are you still in daily contact and kind of bouncing ideas off one another, or is that a different kind of relationship you might have?
Yeah, so I think the reason, and I'm sure it's the same for all of us, but the reason that I got into agenting rather than publishing is because, well, the publishing is within a publisher, is because you're working with the author for kind of the course of their career. So yes, we sign them on that first book, and we work with them editorially, and then we prepare that pitch for publishers, we sell it, and we kind of, we make the deal for them. But then after that, once they're signed up with their publishers, I'm on kind of every single email. I'm across all the marketing, the publicity, the way the book's pitched, the way the book's talked about, the cover conversations, if they're having problems with their edits with their publisher, or just any kind of issues that they need sorted. And that's for that book. But then I'm also with them for kind of, hopefully, their kind of whole creative journey. So when we're talking about book 2s, I'll be there to soundboard, to work out what that's going to look like. And yeah, it's kind of, we kind of do all of it, I guess. We kind of try and be involved in it as much as possible and be there to support the writer through the whole process.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think in terms of how much contact we have with them, like it really depends also on the author. Like there are some of my authors who are like, I'm not going to speak to you until I've got this final draft ready for you. So, and I'm like, great. And then I don't hear from them for like however long that period it is. And then we do, and it's great. And then there are some just because of the nature of the project, perhaps it's one where we're working a lot more collaboratively, that we might be in more regular contact. So it really varies author to author and the stage that they're at.
Yeah, because around the time of publication, for example, in the lead up, once the campaign started and like there's publicity and marketing, things going off, like that's when you're in contact kind of every day with those writers or every week or so. And around publication, you know, you've got a lot of back and forth, but then there's quieter times. And I think with publishing, that's the thing, is like there's some times where it's a real flurry of communication and activity and it feels really, really loud and overwhelming. But then there's the quiet times in between when you're writing and focusing on the project and, you know, back in that kind of like in your laptop stage. So yeah, it really varies throughout the course of the book and the course of the career, but we're there across all of it to support the writers.
Amandeep. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I just feel like I keep jumping in, but I just thought I'd add to that. It's a really good question, and it's worth, if you get an offer of representation, ask the agent, how do you like to work with your authors? Because when you are speaking to an agent, if they've offered you representation, especially if you've got multiple offers of representation, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. You want to know if that's the working relationship, the professional relationship that you want. So ask them, what kind of editorial do you do? How do you like to work with your authors? How many authors do you have? So that you know how much time, because you might want to sign with an agent who's really well established and has a billion clients, or you might go, I want to sign with an agent who has fewer clients and maybe more time for me. It's really up to you, but it's worth asking the agent that you're signing with that question.
Thank you. Okay, one more question for
I'm going to
Amandeep.
go to the very back. That person waving, yeah.
Also, shout out to the roving mic people who have to do a workout up and down the stairs. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, thank you all for being here. I have a specific question. I was agented before, and I always get paranoid that when I'm querying, someone might be like, "Oh my gosh, what was wrong with you? You know, what happened to you?" I just wanted to know how much that factors in to when you're making a decision on the query letter submission package. Like, how much does that matter?
I think sorry, I know everyone here I felt everyone move, because if I'm right, we're all chaos demons and we're always like, who is your agent? What did they do? So it really isn't you. And I think that of everyone who I've ever had a conversation with, a couple of my clients have had agents before me, and they were clearly just wrong to sign with someone who wasn't me. No, it's a professional working relationship, and we've all compared this to applying for jobs in some way in our answers. And I think, it's a similar thing. If you left a previous job, your next job might ask, why did you leave? Or, whatever, but it's expected in a way. If you are a writer becoming an author, or an author who's been previously published and you had an agent, it didn't work out for whatever reason, it's a natural thing that you might want a different agent. I don't think that that's ever a barrier or a red flag in and of itself. So, I do, there's a big power dynamic between agents and authors, and it makes me kind of sad that often that's the way that it will be interpreted on your side of things, that we would look and go, oh, are you the problem? But I think that's very rare, if ever. We're always just like, who was it? And what did they do? Give us the tea.
Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Amandeep? No. Yeah? Okay, perfect. Okay, so final audience participation. I'm afraid that's it for questions because we're out of time. But please, could you put your hand up if you are going to now go back and prepare your submission package? Yes! Okay, I really hope that this has been useful. And thank you so much for coming this Sunday. And
thank you.
Keep writing, keep doing the good work.